Hey, what's up, classic cartoon fans? My name is Rick9G. Thank you so much for joining me today. We're going to be talking about the Looney Tunes. More specifically, about one of my favorite Looney Tunes shorts ever. It's called One Froggy Evening. Now, this is a 1955 release, and what's really interesting is the director is Chuck Jones, but there was no dialogue throughout this whole cartoon short. The only time anyone speaks is when the frog speaks, which is really cool. And in fact, the frog doesn't really speak, it only sings. And it's very surprising to know that Mel Blanc is not in this, which he usually is when he does Bugs Bunny, Daffy, Porky Pig, Foghorn Leghorn, and the others. We instead have William Roberts, who's a classically trained singer who does the voice of the frog. He's actually pretty good. Take a listen.
Hello, my baby. Hello, my honey. Hello, my ragtime gal.
Steven Spielberg once described this as the most perfect cartoon ever made. Very interesting history here in regards to this story of a frog that was able to sing and pretty much never died. Now in Eastland, Texas, there's a story of a one-horned toad named Old Rip. Now it was placed in a cornerstone of a courthouse in 1897, and in 1928 the courthouse was demolished, and the story is that they pulled Old Rip out and he was still alive. He didn't get up and dance though, but 11 months later he actually did pass away, and the citizens made him a fancy velvet lined casket and put him on permanent display where you can actually see him today. Now in 1973, someone claimed that he wanted to come clean about Old Rip, and he claimed that it was all a hoax, and many people believe that this is their inspiration for this cartoon, although it hasn't really been verified. This is the only short ever with the character of Michigan J. Frog, which is pretty interesting because it is very well known. Now, I mentioned William Roberts did do the voice, in fact, the singing of Michigan J. Frog. Sometimes the voice is credited to Terrence Monk, and that is actually incorrect. That is an error, and so the real singer is William Roberts. The cartoon begins bright and cheery with all the colors that usually accompany a Looney Tunes cartoon. Now they're destroying a building. The building is called the J.C. Wilbur Building, and in fact it was built in 1892. Remember, the cartoon took place in 1955. That was the present. Now a man who is part of what is going on here opens this big box. It's kind of like a time capsule. When he goes in there, there's this little box inside, opens it up, and a frog comes out, and he just croaks. He goes, "Burp." Now this man is alone, and once the frog croaks, starts singing and dancing and doing things that obviously a frog is not supposed to do. Instantly the man thinks money, money, money. You see money signs. Remember, this is all through just images, no dialogue. So it's really fun, and it's actually a really funny cartoon. So this man goes to a theater company with this frog to prove that the frog has a real talent of singing and dancing. So appears in front of this executive. The frog does not perform for the executive at all. The only thing he does is just croak, just like that. So he gets kicked out along with the frog, and when he's alone, the frog starts singing and dancing again. Basically, whenever the man is alone, that's when we hear the singing and the dancing, which makes it a lot more funny. Now, he has an idea, this man who's never really given a name, the owner of the frog at this time, we could say, to put on his own theater show and have people pay admission to come see this singing frog. So he uses his pretty much his life savings, and meanwhile the frog is singing and dancing along in the background as this man is trying to get the posters ready, trying to get the theater ready that he rent and put all this money invested into this project. And it's pretty hilarious because the frog day and night keeps singing nonstop. Now no one comes when opening night arrives, and he has to offer free beer. What's interesting is that a lot of the current presentations of this cartoon remove that. Why? Well, it's seen as a little bit for adults instead of for kids. Now the frog unfortunately doesn't perform when everyone is in the theater, and everyone eggs or throws different fruits and vegetables at the man, at the owner of the frog. Now it's kind of sad, but it's a cartoon, and it's just the pacing It's trying to make us laugh. Remember, this is a cartoon. It's for kids, and so we're not thinking about the reality of what's going on, but essentially the man becomes a vagrant. He spent all of his money, and he becomes a vagabond on a bench at the park. You can see he's very poor and raggedy, but it's funny because the frog keeps singing, and the man is just like, what do I do now? I'm bankrupt right now. Again, it's that juxtaposition of being funny but sad, but funny but sad. If you really think about it, I only think adults more think of it as sad versus a kid who watches this and is laughing at this frog that is singing, right? So a police officer hears him and throws him out of the park because the officer thinks he's singing, but no, it's the frog. And he puts him into a psych ward, which again is not really funny. But when you see in the context of what is going on, all this misfortune that is happening to this man as a result of this frog, again, it really is funny if you think about it. That's what the people who made this want us to do. They want us to laugh, right, at these ridiculous thoughts and concepts. I mean, after all, we're watching a frog that's singing, so this is supposed to be funny and ridiculous. The owner of the frog, the man decides to bury the frog and the box into a new building that is being built and just kind of get rid of him and just move on with his life. So he does that, and we see the time passes. In fact, a lot of time passes, 101 years. It's the year 2056. Really interesting. We're currently, as of this video, in 2022, so it's not that far away. But you see all the buildings build up, and it's very much futuresque. And a new man, a century later, opens up this time capsule only to find a little box with the little frog that goes "Brrr." And what happens? Well, of course, he starts singing, "Hello, my baby. Hello, my honey." Just like before, a century later, and we see dollar signs again. This man says, oh my gosh, I can make so much money with a singing frog. And he runs away in a very similar way to the man previously. Now, if you think about it, the cycle continues, right? What happened continues. There's this eternal frog that is pretty much like a bad luck charm. Or is it that maybe they're taking advantage of the situation for their own selfishness and greed? And look what happened. So it's one of those things where it's very open to interpretation if you want to think about it. Is it that the frog itself is sinister? It's just like an eternal thing that just wreaks havoc on anyone who finds him? Or is it the opposite? Is it someone who's maybe should just enjoy this frog and be its owner and feed it and have a good time with it, right? Just like a nice friendship, like a nice pet owner relationship? Or is this trying to take advantage of this poor frog who has a talent, and well, no one believes it but the person who is the owner? I think it's a very interesting thing. There's a lot of morality here, and I think that's surprising for cartoons like this. I never really thought about it, but now that I'm starting to analyze, deep dive into these cartoons, it's really, really interesting. So I hope you learned something. Hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks so much for the support as always. Don't forget to subscribe for more videos just like this. I want to get into other shows, but we're pushing through with Looney Tunes. If you have any suggestions, put them down below. I'd be happy to take a look at those cartoons if I have them available. We'll see you next time, and don't forget, be hopeful.